served has grown to become the most formidable air force in the world. The biggest war news of these early days has been the criminal sinking of the Athenia. The liner, with about 1,400 people on board, including over 1,000 passengers, was outward bound across the Atlantic, virtually a refugee ship, when, without any warning whatsoever, she was torpedoed by a Nazi submarine 200 miles west of the Hebrides. It's reported that after the torpedo had struck, the submarine proceeded to shell the liner. These survivors, landing at Greenock en route for Glasgow, are victims of Hitler's first crime by submarine. That the Nazi communique should deny responsibility for this foul and stupid act of ruthlessness is only to be expected. That the denial is a lie is equally obvious. There is a terrible death roll, but figures are at present incomplete owing to the fact that survivors are taken ashore at different ports. This act alone would justify Britain's determination to abolish Hitlerism for its deliberate, ruthless murder without even the possibility of any advantage to the assassin. So senseless a crime can only further antagonize enemies and horrify neutral nations. It is not difficult to imagine the ordeal through which these survivors have passed. The whole world sympathizes with the injured and bereaved. Those who have escaped with their lives are well cared for on arrival. Most of them will no doubt set out on the journey again. But the crime of the Athenia, recalling so vividly other crimes of the last war, notably the Lusitania, has astonished as well as appalled all civilized people. For at least criminals are seldom so stupid as to commit utterly senseless crimes. Interviews with survivors vividly underline their ordeal. These are Elsie Inch, age 13, of Yonkers, New York, and Sylvia Greer, age 9, of Millbrook, New York. Elsie tells her story.
We ducked in back of a lifeboat until the thing stopped flying around. Then we tried to get in the lounge door, but it was too dark, so I went around to the other door, and I met my mother and dad there. And we went down to a lifeboat, and we got into the lifeboat, and the rope slipped when they were lowering it, and we were submerged under the water. And then when we came up, the boat went on fire. They had to throw the cable overboard that was burning. Then we sailed out, and we got beside one boat about 3 o'clock in the morning, but we drifted away from it again. And then between 7 and 8, we were picked up by the destroyer, and they took us on board.
Now a Canadian, Mr. J. Bland of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
I found myself to be the last passenger to leave the ship. We rowed for about 10 hours, and the courage of the women was magnificent. They bailed with their shoes and burnt their clothes for flares.
Mrs. O'Connell of New York. You were one of the people who saw the submarine, aren't you?
I certainly did. About 2 o'clock the next morning, we were drifting around and spotted the submarine, thinking at first it was one of the destroyers come to our rescue. Upon getting closer, we discovered it was the German submarine. The steward nudged me to keep quiet so as not to cause any alarm, and we turned around and tried to drift away from it, which we did. And we drifted for about 4 more hours when we were finally picked up by the destroyer.
Are you traveling alone on the Athenia, Mrs. O'Connell?
No, I was traveling with my husband.
Where is he now? Have you heard from him?
I only got notified late last night that he had been picked up and was safe in Ireland. It was a terrible experience as he saw me safely in the lifeboat, and the last time I saw him, he was leaning over the rail waving to me as a sign of encouragement.
He must be a very brave man.
He's brave. He's the most wonderful man in the world. He didn't care as long as I got off safe. For 2 days I suffered agony not knowing whether he was dead or alive. But God must have looked after him because he's safe right now.